Chapter 15. The rumor mill worked overtime once the students heard about Shino's bet with Ron. It didn't help Ron's case when his mother sent a very irate howl the morning after. Apparently she was furious he had accepted a bet with such a large monetary loss attached to it. Draco found it hilarious, and had congratulated Shino for the prank. Things were relatively quiet for the most part. Everyone was looking forward to October when the tournament began. To Snape and Shino's relief, the partnership with Neville seemed to more or less work out. Now Neville only blew up his cauldron once a month, instead of every other week. Shino always double-checked the instructions before Neville added the ingredients, and the nervous boy was the one who stirred. As a result of this odd partnership, Neville helped the Shinobi with their herbology homework. They weren't used to magical plants. Anka had made a very big impression on the students during the first day. Particularly on the Slytherins, who had already figured out that Snape and the Dada were trying to pursue a relationship. While Moody scared them with his knowledge of the dark arts and the years under his belt defeating those who used them, Anko terrified them by being herself. She would sneak up on people, drop harmless snakes on those who backtalked her, and exhibited her usual degree of bloodlust while speaking to the students. Despite that, Dada was easily the new favorite class of the students. If only because it was so interesting. The twins had actually gotten on Anka's good side by applauding her snake pranks. And actually managing to prank her once or twice, despite being civilians. And just like that, October rolled in. "Remind me again why we're wearing these bathrobes?" asked Shino. "Dumbledore wanted us to pretend we're regular students, even though we're clearly exchange students," Haku patiently reminded him. She was mostly unaffected by the sudden drop in temperature, but she was the only one who wasn't wearing double layers every day. Well, double layers and a warming charm, courtesy of Fred and George. It was probably the fastest the Shinobi had ever learned anything, including Naruto's record for mastering the shadow clone. Naruto had learned his lesson when it came to divination. Make a shadow clone go. He had one sub for Hinata as well, after Trelawney spooked her by saying she would die by the end of the year. Naruto had come very close to strangling the woman for scaring his girlfriend like that. Shino wasn't the only one who was uncomfortable. Naruto kept fidgeting, and was talking to the twins in a low voice. McGonagall didn't seem to notice. Shino originally wasn't going to wear the robes to this little event. But after giving Dumbledore his ultimatum, "If you want me to wear those ridiculous things you'll have to put them on me yourself. I am not wearing them." Dumbledore had hexed him from behind and transfigured his clothes before Shino could break the spell. To say he had been pissed that he couldn't take them off for the rest of the day would be an understatement. And he wasn't the only one who had gotten hit with the evil spell. Naruto and Sasuke had gotten nailed with it too. Shino could only amuse himself with his plans for revenge. Which would be swift in coming. And he would enlist the twins to make it worse. Only a coward attacks from behind like Dumbledore had. When Anka heard about the incident, she had offered her assistance in making the old man's life a living hell. Suddenly Shino looked up and to the west. He heard horses. He wasn't the only one looking that way, but the Shinobi were the first to see the Bxpitans' carriages arrive. Their attention was quickly diverted to the lake, when they heard something akin to a drain. A derelict ship appeared from the center, and stopped 100 feet from the shore. Heavily built boys a few years older than the Shinobi came out. Shino could appreciate their clothing choice, and planned to get a new fur-lined jacket of his own later. England was freezing for him. Once they were inside, Shino was very amused to see Sasuke squirm. Beside him was clearly someone with Vila blood, because all the straight males were gawking at her. She seemed impressed that Sasuke wasn't staring at her ass or bust, because she eventually struck up a conversation with him. Once it was clear she had a brain, Sasuke tried to relax. Ron was acting like a bigger idiot than usual, because he didn't even look the girl in the eye when she asked for some French pudding. The look of loathing she gave at his table manners gave Shino amusement. To the delight of Naruto, Anko had ensured that he had 50 bowls of ramen to himself. And his favorite flavor at that. The twins were currently taking bets on whether he would be able to finish it all and still have room for dessert. Shino was laying heavy bets that he would. He knew how Naruto loved ramen. Plus he already saw that Anko had an entire platter of dango to herself. Snape had been very amused, almost to the point of laughing out loud, when Professor Vector tried to take a few from the plate. Snape didn't like the woman, who had tormented him in Slytherin back when he was in school. She disliked him because he rubbed her the wrong way. So yes, Snape took clear enjoyment at the look Vector was giving Anko for nearly driving an empty dango stick into her hand. It was actually a rule in Konoha. Touch Anko's dango, and you were on your own. If you ended up dead, it was your own damn fault. Once the food was gone, Shino having won the bet with the twins, not that they were complaining. Naruto had better table manners than Ron, which was a shock in itself. Dumbledore brought out the item that would select the champions. It was an old cup, a goblet to be precise, and it was filled with flames. Shino wasn't impressed. Dumbledore didn't mention the only exemption from the age line were the exchange students. The requirement was that you had to be of age, and since the team was of age back home they qualified. As it was, the age line wouldn't go into effect until after the shinobi had placed their names in the cup. Anko would guard it until that point. They did it right after dinner let out, and went to bed. By morning the robes Dumbledore had forced the boys to put on were shredded beyond all recognition, and plans were being made to make his life hell until the champions were selected. It was unclear whether the shinobi would be selected under Hogwarts, which was unlikely but possible, or under Konohagakure, which was the more likely chance. Ron had at least learned his lesson about challenging the newcomers. He had left Naruto alone after learning the twins had considered him a valued accomplice, and the three were often pranking together. Sasuke was always avoiding him along with the new fangirls, who were attracted to his dark mystique. Shino was relieved that the boy avoided him like the plague to avoid being reminded of the department, which he was only going to hold Ron to if he angered him enough. Ron didn't go near the girls, mostly out of fear of their boyfriends who would kill him in his sleep. And he was absolutely correct. If he had tried to go after either of the girls, Naruto and Shino would kill him without a second thought. It wasn't like they didn't know how to hide the body. For the next week, students came and dropped their names. Some, like the Weasley twins, attempted to bypass the age line with a potion. Shino was the one to point out that they had gone about it the wrong way, and then redirected them to Anko. She dropped their names in, after being appropriately bribed with fire whiskey. Moody kept confiscating it from her for some reason. Eventually she had given up drinking whenever he was around. Once the week was over, Shino waited with the rest for the selections to begin. They were curious as to which school they would be labeled under. The names were selected. Victor Crumb, Fleur Delacour, the girl with Vela blood, George Weasley, who looked amused that Shino's suggestion had actually worked, were all selected. Finally, a fourth slip came out. Fortunately the other headmasters were warned about this. Aburame Shino. Shino walked to the side door where the others had gone. So they were going to be representing Konoha instead of Hogwarts. He could live with that. It wasn't until later that he heard about the fifth name. One that had caused no end of confusion. And had him annoyed beyond belief. Someone had entered his birth name and had confused the goblet into spitting it out. Luckily for him, he was already entered in the tournament legally. The Gryffindors were still wrapping their heads around the fact that Shino was entered in the tournament, despite being an exchange student. It took 4 times for them to get it through their heads. Fortunately they weren't about to ostracize the shinobi, for 3 important reasons. One was that Shino was completely upfront and honest about the fact that they were allowed to enter because back home they were of age. too was the fact that since they had shown up, Snape had toned down his insults and point deductions to the point where people didn't hate him on sight anymore. For the first time in years since Snape was hired, Gryffindor was holding its own against Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. The third, and most important reason in the minds of many, was Anko. No one wanted to complain about such a minor problem of Shino being allowed to enter the tournament because of his age around her. It was a well-known fact by this point that she favored him, and no sane person was willing to piss her off. She had already demonstrated her favorite game of how many times can I make you bleed with my poisonous snakes on 10 Slytherin's 6th and 7th years, 2 of which were prefects. It was only because Haku had been forewarned by Shino to carry the usual antidotes that they had survived the incident. After that no one wanted to piss her off, even if she had been reprimanded by Dumbledore for the act. Not that that would stop her from doing it again. Snape was their client, not the headmaster. It was George who learned what the first task was, and that only by accident. Charlie, the second oldest Weasley child, visited his brothers during lunch. It hadn't taken 10 minutes for George to figure out that the first task involved dragons. Sasuke was rather eager to meet Charlie, mainly because he was interested in how to procure a dragon egg. Like all Uchiha, Sasuke was a bit of a pyromaniac. Shino was too, but he hid that fact better. Upon learning that, Shino had decided to go the unconventional route. Depending on what the task was, he was going to use illusions. Though if the opportunity came and he could steal a dragon, or better yet an egg, he was going to take it. If it did involve eggs, he was going to take 3. 1 for him, Sasuke ... and 1 for Hagrid. The man had told him with some teary eyes about the baby dragon he had been forced to give up because of the laws. Shino rather liked the man, who had accidentally learned about Shino's hive and hadn't freaked out. Shino had offered to help get him set up in Konoha, where no one would really complain about a dragon unless it went on a rampage. They had seen stranger things. Hagrid had been torn between loyalty to Dumbledore and acceptance in a place he had never been. But it was the fact that he would be allowed to finally get a new wand and keep a dragon that sealed the deal. For years Hagrid had to suffer problems because he was half giant. Most people wouldn't overtly make his life hard, but it was still there. He just tried to ignore it. Plus he could teach the shinobi about magical creatures and not have to worry about them getting killed because of his penchant for dangerous beasts. Finding out that Shino and his team were well used to such things had been such a relief that Hagrid would cheerfully debate the more dangerous breeds with them. Seeing Anko's summons had been interesting for the man, because he didn't flinch at their size or the fact they could talk. That alone had put him in their good books. Which was the only reason Shino had offered to help him move to Konoha. His love of animals would help him get along with the Inuzuka and Nara clans, while his sheer size would endear him to the Akamachi clan. The fact he didn't mind people with insect hives in their bodies would put him on the Aburame's good side. That was why Shino was considering stealing 3 eggs instead of 2. Somehow, Shino had the sneaking suspicion Hagrid would attempt to make one of the large Fire Country tigers his pet. It would be amusing if that actually happened. Shino reached into the bag, and drew out the horntail. He wasn't very happy that he would be last. He just wanted it to be over with. George got to go out first, and Shino watched through his lightning bugs how he did. He had to admit, using those fireworks was rather clever. Next was Crumb. Shino winced when he saw the dragon crush the eggs. Fleur was after him, and he was very impressed at how calm she was putting out that small fire on her robe. Finally it was his turn. He was going to use a mass genjutsu to fool the crowd and hopefully the dragon. He didn't want to hurt the beast if he could help it. To his relief, the genjutsu worked. Though not exactly as he had planned. The dragon had hissed at him, very annoyed, and to Shino's surprise he had understood it. Though the accent alone was a bit hard to make out. "Stupid human, do you think such a trick would fool one such as me?" Shino blinked. He adjusted the illusion to cover sounds. As far as the crowds knew, he was ducking flames. My apologies. I was unaware a noble creature such as yourself would be unaffected by my illusions. Manda-sama did not have much information on your kind, I'm afraid. The dragon blinked. You know that old serpent Manda? I am a snake summoner, despite the fact that my body is full of deadly insects. What do you want, kid? I merely wish to remove the fake egg from the nest ... and possibly rescue 3 of the real ones from the wizard's control. The dragon gave him a long look, before replying, take the fake one and the ones closest to me. The others are going to die anyway, since they've been in the cold for so long. I've managed to save 4 of them with my flames, but the rest are doomed. Thank you, madame. I will keep the wizards from harming the 4 you have saved. Raise them well, little summoner. Shino walked up to the nest, and took the 4 eggs the dragon had indicated. They were warm to the touch. His hive couldn't sense any life from the rest. He put the eggs in a sealing scroll, where they would be put in suspended animation until he brought them out. Since the scroll had been made in Konoha during the hottest part of summer, the eggs would be in the humid climate as well. It would keep them alive until he returned to Konoha and hatched them. The only ones who saw what he did were his team, and that only because he had warned them about the genjutsu. They had heard the entire exchange. Well, they guessed what Shino had said to the dragon, since it was in snake tongue, and waited until Shino altered his illusion to make it appear as though he was approaching the nest. By the time he was in the tent, the crowd believed he had ducked and dodged past the dragon to retrieve the egg. No one was even paying attention to the fact that 4 of them were missing. The handlers wouldn't even realize the problem until after they took the dragons back. They chalked the error to Crumb's mistake and moved on. The party in the Gryffindor Tower set Shino's teeth on edge. It was only his years of exposure to Naruto and the Pink Banshee that kept his hive in check. And that only because he was trying his best to keep the hive under control. The wasps were particularly testy today. It was when George opened his egg that things really got dangerous. Shino was very, very glad of his iron control over his hive, because the shriek that was emitted from the egg nearly caused the wasps to break free and harm the students. Dear Kami, I thought the Pink Banshee's harping was bad, muttered Shino. Naruto nodded in complete agreement. People looked at Shino, as if urging him to open his egg as well. Shino decided to go another route. He went to bed early. What Shino encoded to Dumbledore for being forced to wear robes. Dumbledore scratched heartily. He seemed to have developed fleas, though he was damned as to where he caught them. McGonagall always took care of them if she accidentally got them, and that only happened if she forgot to cast a spell she had learned years ago after mastering her Animagi transformation. He didn't own any animals that could actually give him fleas. And there was the almost impossible to ignore itch on his back. Further investigation revealed that he had acquired ticks, large ones, as well as fleas. Then there was his bed. For a month straight, his bed collapsed in on itself from termite damage. Every ward he placed was walked around. He also had various odd symptoms that Madame Pomfrey was hard-pressed to get rid of. One of her scans revealed that he had somehow contracted a yeast infection of all things, which caused all the female staff to avoid him like the plague. He also had pink eye, though he had no idea how to treat it. It seemed someone was giving him random ailments that no magical potion could cure. He had to leave the school repeatedly to pick up remedies at a mall drugstore. The only problem was that most of the remedies required a doctor's prescription, and he couldn't get one because he had no records in the mall world. So he played a hit-and-miss game with various prescription drugs. So far he was winning, but it was becoming rather difficult to get the medicine he needed with the increased security at the store. Eventually it stopped, but not before he found a warning delivered courtesy of the Sorting Hat. It was rather smug, which annoyed him to no end. The accursed piece of enchanted fabric had found his suffering amusing, and had adopted an "I told you so" attitude. I have been asked to inform you that should you attempt to hex the exchange group from behind again, they will retaliate 3 times worse than before, and this time they won't hold back. Anko in particular has mentioned something about giant snakes in your tub if there is a repeat. Dumbledore shuddered. He had caught sight of Anko's larger snakes, and they were easily bigger than the basilisk that was trapped in the chamber. It was only pure luck that they had found Ginny before she had gotten killed by that cursed diary.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you guys want to watch more like it, please subscribe to my channel and become part of the video game fanfiction plot. And please leave a comment down below and hit that like button. If you guys have any suggestions on any stories you guys want me to read, don't hesitate. They're always welcome here in the video game fanfic plot. That also goes for video games. Until next time, goodbye!